Hello, we are
Yes.
live. We are live.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. And we're going live on my end as well here on the Donald Kent channel. So this is our weekly Tuesday stream, Patriotic Art Live with Patriot and myself, Donald Kent. And so what did the community choose for our theme this week? Sorry.
Okay, so the creative theme was a very close tie between Constantinople and when Britannia ruled the waves. So
Mm,
both would have been good. This has been a hot favorite for the past few weeks, so I've kept it in the poll, and it's eventually kind of made it. So we're gonna do Constantinople. It's a great kind of part of our history as Europeans. And so
mhm.
today, hopefully, we're gonna do some justice to the theme with some great artwork, and also we're gonna talk on a bit of the history of it. We've got some bullet points ready, and yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So I know
Yeah.
you're very prepared, more prepared than I am. So
uh,
let's start off by showing your preparedness.
all
Um,
right. Well, I'll see about adjusting the light a little bit. So whenever I do a design, I lay out the concept lightly in pencil. I've been using this toned paper because then you can add highlights. For example, I'll be putting some clouds in the sky, and then that kind of light color pops off the surface nicely, etc. I'm trying to go more for a fine art look than a sort of comic book illustration look. Most people know me for my comic stuff,
yeah.
but I have a huge background. Anyway, getting off track. So my theme here, as I've got the main cathedral here. I believe it's the Hagia Sophia, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Unfortunately, we know that it's now a mosque, but
Yeah,
in
yeah.
its
Unfortunately,
it
that's
right.
that's the
For me,
case.
the theme today for me is take back Constantinople. That
Okay,
it
awesome.
is change Istanbul to Constantinople to take back all of Rome. Of the entire
Mm-hmm.
you know everything. I mean, it's a in a sense it's a spiritual take back as much as anything else, because above all, primarily, that is, in my heart, the goal is to raise racial consciousness.
Uh,
So here, what I and racial solidarity, racial spirituality is really the word I've been using a lot more. um, Everywhere you turn, there's psyops. I can go off on those topics later, but here I've got the main cathedral in the center. I'm looking, of course, at some graphics for the architecture, and then on the left is a crusader with his sword. On the right is Emperor Constantine holding the fasces, and in the center, I'm debating actually about putting something sort of like on a table, something like maybe a sword and a shield, or something that has a symbol for our movement today, you know, maybe
okay.
a helmet. I mean, I was even thinking of putting a gun on the table here, that it's kind of like saying that the third person in the triad here is you, the viewer,
A
and
gun,
that
eh?
you're yeah, I know, and that you were well. That's the tool of that's the tool of war today. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
of course the fasces represents Rome. The sword has the cross on it. It represents the Christian faith, and that part of our history, the Crusades, which is today essentially what would translate as Christian nationalism. So I'm sort of trying to think through what would be the tools that might, you know, be the tools that we would need. I mean, it would seem awkward and anachronistic, I think, to have modern, let's say, like an AK-47 and an army helmet or something there. Might I don't know. Does that throw the viewer off? Does it seem weird? Does you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So as
yeah.
an artist, you kind of you go through the agony of wondering, is this a good idea or not?
Yes.
And that's why you hear me going, all the time.
I know.
Maybe this, maybe that. But to just have the two figures alone is essentially, I think, just talking about the history of Constantinople, the importance of it in our Western history, and then of course the context today, within the movement, taking back our spiritual empire, our racial empire, taking back who we are as a people, So what kind of weapons would it be? A keyboard and a computer?
Yeah.
It seems a little weird, I think, having a computer there, I feel. So I'm kind of struggling with this idea. And anyone in the chat, if you want to share.
I think I think a traditional weapon could be just as impactful, because it's almost like you have been invited back into that time to become part of them. So it's like embrace the sword, and the sword is symbolic. It doesn't need to be your time, but I guess the time is ours, Trooper. So maybe you're just trying to play on that connection, right?
That's the idea, to modernize it and to modernize the image, in the sense of like, here's our plight, here's our struggle, and you are a part of it. That you are connected to the history of both the Roman Empire and the Crusades. And as such, take your seat at the table. This is your people, this is your history, this is your right, in a sense, So it's clearly got a political edge to it, this theme that I'm working on here.
Cool. I'm just faffing about, trying to get the views a little bit. I'll be with you all very soon. I'm just trying to play around with establishing the position of it's technology, eh? Right, how did I bring that back?
It's always a thing, isn't it? So while you're working on that, I'm gonna read a few historic points so that the audience have a more enriching show here, learn a bit about the theme here. Excuse me. 10 key facts about Constantinople. The foundation and the naming. Constantinople was founded by Roman Emperor Constantine the Great in 330 AD on the site of the already existing city of Byzantium. He named it Nova Rome, but it was colloquially known as Constantinople, meaning city of Constantine. That I didn't know. That's kind of a neat thing. It seems almost that there's a sort of love for Constantine if the people just had like a kind of a playful name that it's the city of our king. The capital, it was the capital of the Roman Empire. It became the capital of the Roman Empire, marking the shift of power from Rome to the east, and later became the capital of the Byzantine Empire, serving as a bridge between Europe and Asia. So that's quite unique, if we look at that, and that being like an important stronghold, I guess perhaps against the east. Here's a funny side note, like in America, when we say the East or Asia, we always mean like Asians, meaning like East Asians, meaning Chinese, Korean, Filipino, Thai, Japanese. Okay. But I believe in Europe, when you guys say Asia, you're talking more about Persians, maybe.
Asians more. We usually say that for more sort of Orientals, more Oriental types.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, because I guess in the news I always say like an Asian man was caught on a bus doing something inappropriate, and then it's a guy from Pakistan. Anyway, so one more, the Theodosian walls, constructed in the 5th century, under Emperor Theodosius II. These formidable defense walls protected Constantinople from numerous sieges until the 15th century. I often think in those times, like, oh my God, like the war technology, or the things that they had to do in war. You didn't just swing a sword. You had to, build fortifications and, craft weapons and repair boats and, on and on and on. I know that, when the Romans were expanding into, the Celts and the Germanic areas, etc., they would build these fortresses that were essentially little villages, and they had their own kind of economies and various things. They were allowed to have wives in a lot of these cases, in a lot of these places.
Hmm.
And I would say that they were primarily the beginning of settlements in these territories. So it's kind of interesting. I would imagine allowing your Roman soldiers to have wives, especially if you conquer an area and then, take the people from that area and conscript them in your army. It's like, okay, you're going to get housed, you're going to get food, you'll have a wife. What more do you want, kind of thing. You can sort of see how you can practice your own religion, but when it comes time, you work for Rome. So
Exactly.
I don't know how good or bad that is in context of history, but anyway, I think it's a testament to how successful the empire was.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a very talked about subject, is it? Constantinople. I think it gets a little bit overlooked, but it's very. It was kind of like one of the last stands of Byzantine, and obviously it passed from the hands of Rome through to the Byzantine Empire, and so it was a massive stronghold bridging Europe and the sort of the Eastern world. So it was. Now I'm a little bit delayed on here, but
it might be because the fact that it's now taken over by Muslims, and it's, you see a lot of pictures of the inside of the building and how Muslified it is. I don't know if that's a word or not, but Islamified.
Islamified, I think, is the word.
Yeah, that would be right. See, that's why I hang out with you, improve my English.
Yes. Bear with me.
What I need to learn, though, are like cool British slang terms. I can
Really.
So I can impress the birds.
Oh yeah, I can teach you a few.
I'm sure you guys don't use the term bird anymore. That's like from like the Beatles age or something.
To be honest, no, not really. No.
That's quite old.
Yeah. We used to use it a lot as teens, though.
Is that right? So that word stuck around.
One is a totty. Totty is a
totty.
A totty. Some top totty.
Oh, tardy. T-A-R-T.
T-O-T-T. Yeah.
Oh.
I'm just gonna try and get some inspiration. I am lagging behind. Constantinople.
So what are your thoughts then, there, Patriot, in terms of what ideas you have for this?
So, right, I was thinking of. I just want to capture the beauty of Constantinople in its peak, in its prime. So, I know it's something you could do. It's quite inspiring, but it would be nice to have Constantine in there, or at least some form of tribute to his throne.
Sure.
But yeah, ultimately, I just want to do, I think, a nice landscape setting.
Okay.
And try and just show off the glory of it, really, with the ships sailing. And I know it was a central point of trade. for bridging the gap between the East and the West. And a lot of the East was quite, but it wasn't as Arabized, should I say. Obviously, it was one of the last places, and the Turks eventually captured it and subdued it. But you know, there was a lot of ships, and it's a peninsula, isn't it? So
yes, yeah, that brings up a kind of a funny topic for me. I was always, years ago when I first learned about the EU, I was so shocked to see that Turkey was part of the EU. I'm like, Turkey is not part of Europe. What the hell is Turkey doing in the EU? You know, like, why how the hell does that
I
make
guess
any sense?
they're not typically European now, but at one point in time, you know, Turkey was populated by Celtic people. The Galatians were,
I'm aware of the history. The entire, gosh, I would say, you know, from say, you know, Ireland all the way to, you know, maybe parts of China, there were Caucasians, you know, and all across this region. A lot of the, you know, early Persian areas, it's sort of a commonly known thing, but it's just that a lot of India, etc., were actually founded by Caucasian people in very, very old times. You know, migration and the rest of that. You know, things change, of course. Borders change. You know, this, that, and the other thing. But like when we were talking about. Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I think the earliest civilizations were kind of were built off a lot of the Caucasian groups, weren't they? And if you think about it, it kind of makes sense. I think if you go back thousands of years, the populations would have boomed within cities and walled cities, because you wouldn't have had constant tribes picking off each other and that. And so you'd have had time to flourish, and then you've got agriculture and setting up, you know, towns, cities in rivers, and so I think basically from them parts we branched out and populated a lot of the areas there like that. So.
Yeah, it's something I'm still learning about, but I think it's important for people in our movement to be aware of those things as well. So.
Yeah,
but it is interesting. You do kind of wonder, like, well, why is it that we don't think about or talk about Constantinople? And this is such an important part of Roman history. You know, there's a lot there, but I guess, and I don't know, this is just me thinking, but it seems to me that, like, a lot of history, that the farther you go east, the less people seem to know about history. So, like, I don't know very much about, say, Slavic history. That's kind of in my Western American education, it just wasn't something that was really focused on, you know. We did get a lot of European history, you know, which is great. You know, I'm you know, grateful for that. But I feel like it's mainly, or maybe because of the communist takeover, you know, in the past century, and how, you know, anything that's going to be said about these Slavic countries is that they're occupied by the Soviets. You know, like, that's the only. It's sort of just political, you know. And well, like, who were they before they were, you know, invaded by Russia and like enslaved by communism? You know, these our brothers and sisters, you know. Yeah. And
understanding Byzantine Empire, I don't think it gets talked too much about it. It lives in the shadow of the Roman Empire a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's well said.
And to be honest, I don't really know that much about the Byzantine Empire at all. I thought it was more Greek, So that was my understanding
Well,
of it, that it was kind of, in
mhm,
fact, I actually
mhm.
thought the Byzantine Empire was before the Roman Empire, and it was the reverse. But I don't think it was
Oh
it?
wow. No, no. Um, I think in terms of, I believe Constantine is the one who made Christianity the official religion
Religion.
of Rome.
Yeah.
So that would be like the big turning point right there.
Uh-huh.
That's a very, very, very major paradigm shift in the Roman Empire. And then, of course, later with the Muslims invading and taking over, that would be the next big shift. Um, so I guess what I'm the theme I'm talking about in this piece is another shift, another great shift.
Yeah.
Um, I don't know how much are Turks Caucasian, because I do think that there is a mixing. I do
Yeah,
think
yeah.
that
I mean,
there's some
I've been to
kind
Turkey
of
quite a lot of
ethnic
times
brotherhood.
actually, and I
Okay,
think
yeah,
you can tell they've definitely got a lot of a white base, Caucasian base there. And there's a
yeah,
slight
yeah.
browning off of Arabic injection. Uh,
Yes,
but generally, there's a lot of blonde-haired types out there,
yeah, right,
blonde-haired
right.
uh, peoples, and but yeah, there
Mhm.
are also a lot of. I mean, have you been to Turkey before at all?
No, no.
No.
Um, I have a good friend who was there. I believe that it would be pretty amazing to visit, you know. Um, and I mean, I would not mind going there if it were safe. You know what I'm saying? Like, I always
Turkey,
feel that,
yeah. Well, Turkey is not
yeah.
actually that dangerous, to be honest. It's very touristy.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
yeah. Turkey's
Um, I, I,
pretty safe. Um,
to me, any Muslim country is not safe. You know what I'm saying? I
I guess it
genuinely
depends where you
feel that.
go. I think
Yeah.
Istanbul is probably one of those because it's the capital. Mind you, um, mind you, a lot of the capitals tend to have a lot of tourism anyway. So uh,
Huh, I
I
get your
don't know,
point. Yeah.
but I used to go to a lot of places, the very touristy places like Marmaris and whatnot
Hmm.
for
Hmm. Hmm.
for a degenerate holiday.
Okay.
You
There's
know.
a place there's a place in Turkey called if I'm pronouncing this right, Göbekli Tepe. Have you heard of that? Göbekli Tepe.
Um,
It's
no, is that the one that Graham Hancock talks about?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm a big Graham Hancock fan here.
Yeah.
I need to start reading my chats. There's a lot of chats here. But yeah, it's essentially this underground city that was excavated by Caucasians,
Hmm.
thousands, probably. I can't give you the exact number, but longer than 10,000 years ago, something of that nature.
Okay.
Um, and they're extremely amazing. And it's one of the great wonders of the world. How did they build an underground city with all these ventilation shafts? And, there's just pottery and various things
Yeah.
that show, and why do that too? Like, what was I mean, is there something on the surface that had to be, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of thought and pontification on that. I'm going to say a quick hello to my channel. Thank you so much for joining. My channel is a good friend and a common visitor on my shows. Also, Robert Pyle, very, very happy to have you here, a distinguished gentleman. Just fixed me some lunch, and just so happens that the stream is live the same time I'm about to chow down. All right, enjoy.
Sure.
Um, you having some fish and chips over there in the mighty UK? Hail Rome, yes, indeed. Hippocratic Oath is here. Yo, good to see you, brother. Um,
Hello.
so maybe a few more points on Constantinople. I'll read off a little bit of the history. Let's see. The Hagia Sophia. Hopefully, I'm not pronouncing that badly too much with my American accent. The Hagia Sophia, initially built under Emperor Justinian the First, In 537, the Hagia Sophia stood as the world's largest cathedral and an architectural marvel of the Byzantine Empire for nearly 1,000 years before becoming a mosque and later a museum.
Wow.
Okay. Another tidbit of information, the Nika riots. Okay, so I've never heard of this. In 532, the Nika riots, a devastating revolt against Emperor Justinian I, resulted in the death of thousands and led to the reconstruction of the Hagia Sophia. I wonder what the purpose of those riots were. I can't say. Must have been a lot of damage, I would imagine. Number 6, iconoclasm controversy. The city was the center of the iconoclasm controversy during the 8th and 9th centuries, leading to widespread destruction of religious images and significant religious turmoil within the Byzantine Empire. I don't know if that could have laid the foundation for
Islam.
Yeah, I mean, I don't quite know yet, but obviously in Islam they don't allow, I guess graven images or something that that only God can produce, images, and it's sinful for man to do that, and that's why mosques just have writing all over them and no actual art that is, it's not calligraphy. Interesting.
Yeah. Very interesting.
Yes, indubitably.
So yeah, I'm just going for a basic, very basic lifestyle sort of image, just a basic scene.
Oh, yours there, yeah. Okay, so the approach that I'm taking is, again, sort of trying to look at this more like a painting in a sense. I'm using colored pencils.
Okay.
A lot of the issue with the show for me is that it's kind of like, okay, do a complete work of art within 2 hours.
Yeah, and I know what you mean.
Can't always be done. Yeah. So, like, I mean, I think it's wonderful what we're doing. That's great. But there's that challenge. So I have a smaller piece of paper. I don't have, that helps in terms of getting the general gist of the image across, what have you, and I can go back and finish it. But,
yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I tend to, start out, and I didn't get a chance to finish my piece from last week, so I'm a little bit behind on that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is preparedness as well. I probably could be a little bit more prepared with an idea. I think next week I will have laid the foundations for my art and then go a bit more into it. I tend to do an art process anyway for people to see. A time-lapse sped up. So.
Oh, that's right. I just saw that like today, earlier.
Did you?
Your portrait, your portrait of Alexander the Great, I believe.
Oh yeah. Turned out okay.
Yeah.
I quite
I like
it. I'm still trying to develop my drawing style. It's very sketchy still at the moment. But, I quite like. I think I'm gonna go for a style where, with rough lines, and then loose kind of washy colors behind. So
Nice.
almost like a watercolor, but a digital watercolor type vibe.
Nice, very nice.
But we'll see. I mean, the aim of doing these regular videos as well is to improve my art.
See, that's the thing. My like I've been doing so much comics that my comic art style is getting better and better and better. And
Yeah,
it's literally anything you do, a lot of, you're naturally going to get better at it. But
yeah,
it's just
exactly.
nice. It feels good. Feels good to see progress,
Hmm.
and change, and feel proud about it and stuff.
Yeah,
It's pretty good.
I think we need a cross on this. It's missing a cross.
So, yeah, just
I think let's
what's
talk
that?
a few more points. Which ones did you read off so far?
I think I finished at number 5, the Nika riots.
Okay.
Oh no, it's number 6, the controversy of the iconoclast. That actually wouldn't be a bad discussion. Like, is it sinful for man to create? Obviously, we don't agree. I guess we're doing it.
Is it what? It's sinful for man to create what images?
Yes, yes.
No, distinctly not. It's the act of creativity. I mean, I'm assuming it's from a biblical perspective, and even the Islamic, the point you made about Islam forbidding graved images and stuff. The point
Yeah.
is having graved images, which are the object of worship,
Yes.
and that's the point of making them a god, making them a form of a relic, or attributing some form of a divine value to them, as if they can,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm.
as if they've got some kind of fortune behind them. That's when it becomes idolatry, because you are
Ah.
replacing that image with the
Okay.
with a form of faith that it's gonna,
Yeah.
and that's when it becomes essentially a god. So it's, I guess,
Yeah.
the Buddha, for example, the way
Yeah.
that's carved and centerpiece, that is idolatry, so to speak. But having an ornament of a man sitting down chilling, that's a piece of art. Do you know what I mean? There's a massive difference between the intent behind what you have created. So what we're doing now is we're creating our using our artistic you know endeavors to
Mm-hmm.
recreate stuff, and that's perfectly
Yeah.
acceptable within the perspective of Christianity.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I think religious arts, reliquaries, etc. They function. That's what I call spiritual technology. They you use them to interface with God in some way, and so, like, I think that they're a really critical part of religious practice,
Mm.
spiritual practice as well. Yeah, obviously, I know quite a lot about how that works in Buddhism. That's a different. Nobody's well. If people are worshiping statues in Asia, and they do, as if the statue itself is the god or spirit or devil,
Mm-hmm.
and yes, there's that. I can tell you an interesting story on that.
Okay.
Then that's absolutely idolatry. But you're not worshiping a piece of stone or wood. Rather, you are using the Buddha's image as a form of mental focus, as a form of inspiration,
Okay.
and as a kind of a it's a link to you and the particular Buddha that you are honoring and, like, following. It's
Okay, so it's
I
like
try.
the middle path type.
Yeah, I think try to imagine if all the saints in Catholicism had their own practice. Like, you could say, I follow the techniques of Saint John or Saint Paul or Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and that would be fascinating that each of them had their own methods of Christianity that all worked. But
mm,
why are there so many different methods? Well, that's because there's so many different learning styles. There's so many different kinds of people. There's people that are illiterate. There are people that are highly intellectual. There's people that are artistic and emotional. There's a lot of different types of people. So that's essentially that.
right.
And
Okay.
I do I kind of feel like that does sort of exist. I think maybe in Catholicism,
Yeah,
that
there
things
are
like
there
praying the
are.
Rosary and
It is very image led
yeah.
in Catholicism. So I mean, it's one of those things. It does for me. It kind of, I think, with the notion of Mary, but I guess I think a lot of actual practicing Catholics would kind of argue similar points to yourself, with sentiments of it's not that you are adorning the object of Mary, but it's more like a tribute of respect to
Yes,
that
adoration. Right.
adoration. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yes,
but I mean, biblically speaking, as it was in the sort of the Older Testament gods, they were a lot of the statues were kind of worshipped and adorned as if they were gods themselves. I think,
yeah,
and graven
uh,
images that you
right.
kind of
Hence,
took
like the
refuge
golden
in. Yeah,
calf.
you expected it to. Well, you would pray to it,
Yeah,
and expect some form of divine
well, but
intervention, as if it was an entity that could save you, rather than it's and there's a massive emphasis on worshipping creation rather than the creator. I think that was a lot of the in ancient Rome prior to Christianity. There was it was very much planetary, worshipping the planetary systems and stuff like that, and nature
yeah,
itself. That's how
yeah,
the Apostle Paul puts it anyway, worshipping creation as opposed to the creator. Um,
yeah.
yeah, let's read a little bit more. So you got to point 7. So the fourth is the Fourth Crusade and Latin Empire. In 1204, Constantinople was sacked by Crusaders of the Fourth Crusade, leading to the establishment of the Latin Empire and significantly weakening the Byzantine Empire. So there's the Latin Empire as well. So I guess that was the language. See that the Latin Empire is still a product of the Roman Empire, surely.
I'm sure, but I can't. I've never heard of that at all. Like that to me is completely new. The
Yeah.
Latin Empire. What is that?
Uh,
Spain
I don't know.
occupied
I
this?
don't know, but it's worth. Maybe I'll do
Yeah.
have a look up. Maybe it's just when Latin essentially took over as the main predominantly spoken language.
Yeah, and perhaps Latin doesn't. It means more Latin of that time rather than what we would
Okay,
think of
so
today.
just
Like,
quick
I'm, I'm,
Wikipedia.
I'm, I'm sure there were no Mexicans in Constantinople at that
No,
time.
well, again, that's just how culture moves on, and migrations and patterns.
Sure,
And
of course, yeah.
I'll speak to that in a sec. The Latin Empire, also referred to as the Latin Empire of Constantinople, was a feudal crusader state founded by the leaders of the Fourth Crusade on lands captured by the Byzantine Empire. The Latin Empire was intended to replace the Byzantine Empire as the West and recognized Roman Empire in the East, with a Catholic emperor enthroned in place of Eastern Orthodoxy. So I'm assuming then it was an attempt to reclaim the eastern sort of branch off of the Roman Empire, because the Byzantine Empire was essentially when Rome split, and it kind of the power vacuum essentially became the Byzantine Empire instead of just a complete Roman Empire, if you know what I mean. And it sounds like that crusade was kind of part of an effort to reclaim some of the Roman glory, from the Western Hemisphere.
Okay.
But yeah, the point you made earlier about the Latin, I mean, it's funny that when people say, yeah, I'm Latino, well, yeah, but you weren't the originators of Latin.
I know.
All of that Latin culture comes from Latia, I think, who founded Rome, and that's when the language kind of took root there, and so it's based on an actual king,
Huh.
from the original founders of Rome, and then from that Latin emerged, which was the commonly spoken language there. I think from the sort of like the Etruscans or
Okay.
mixed with the Etruscans and the early Roman
Okay.
settlers who I believe are connected to the Trojans. And when the city of
Okay.
Troy fell, so it goes back to that, and it has knock-on effects. And so obviously, as the Spanish Empire went to the Americas and started to colonize,
Yeah.
their language impacted them, and they intermixed with the locals there, and then that's where the Latinos essentially come from.
Right. Right. Right.
So yeah, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? But yeah, they although they're heralding the name now of Latino, they don't really have anything to do
No.
with the foundations of the
No.
language. But they're basically they're an amalgamated culture, aren't they now?
Correct. Correct. Yeah. I think like that's really what our enemies want to happen to all Western countries. They
Yeah,
want us to
exactly.
just be mixed breeds of, various races. Yeah.
Well, that's essentially what an Arab is. An Arab is a person of mixed origin.
I've kind of always wondered about that. I have a pretty good knowledge about race and the like, but like with the Arabs, I don't really know a ton about them. I've researched quite a lot about Asians, Native Americans, Caucasians, of course. I know a bit about Africans, the ghost gene. I don't know if you're aware of what they call the ghost gene, which is the 19% hominid gene within
Yeah.
Africans. And that's pure blood Africans, not people that have race mixed over the years.
Yeah. I think
We
African
got
Americans I think we mentioned before, have aren't real. Well, you can't really say that they are pure sub-Saharan by now.
by now, yeah, and a lot in the case with Native Americans as well. They've interbred in and out with whites over a couple hundred years. So, not all of them, obviously, but like there's a fair amount. Just going to read some of the comments in my chat. The Aryan Christians went through Greece, destroyed temples. The Aryan Christians? Okay, let me check this out. The way you're spelling it, Arian, is that something different? Asian? Is that what you meant to say? I don't know. The Aryan Christians went through Greece, destroying temples. The Catholics declared them heretics for unrelated reasons, but the damage was done. B is asking me, are you an Apollonian? Your last stream mentioned certain concepts that seem like Mark Brahman points. Just joined. I don't know if you answered. I will answer that. So Mark Brahman is a close friend of mine. We've worked on comics together. There's a comic on Amazon called The Seraph that he wrote and I illustrated. Very, very cool. You can look that up, The Seraph, Mark Brahman, on Amazon. And I've had him on my show. We've been on shows when we were promoting that comic. We were on JF's show. We just blah, 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 blah. So I'm very familiar and I'm very influenced by some of Mark's concepts in the ApollonianTransmission.com. I urge people to go check that out. I've always, and I always will be, my own person. I have my own thoughts, ideas, philosophy, direction. I'm a Sigma wolf, basically. So I don't belong to groups. I belong to everyone. In the sense of like what I can take from Apollonianism, I do. And what I can take from Buddhism, I do. And what I can take from Gnosticism, I do. And what I take from Christianity, I do. And so that's really, so when you say, are you an Apollonian? I can say, yes, that's part of what I am. I don't, how do I put it? So I would leave it to people to go and read Mark's ideas and come to their own conclusions. For me, the biggest influence has been racial esoteric moralization. That obviously plays directly into what I do and who I am. So that is very much what I'm doing right now in front of you, is, you know, incorporating that concept into art. And I think so from my perspective, and from what I have been, my mission as Donald Kent Art has always been to control, take back, be part of the narrative of white positive art and culture. So this philosophy of racial esoteric moralization in the arts is one of the most important ideas in our sphere. So Mark has, I would say Mark is very anti-Christian. He's got his reasons for that. We both strongly agree on the Jews and Judaism and other things of this nature. You know, if you want to kind of go down the list of, you know, like how many points do I have to check off to call myself an Apollonian? I don't know. I believe that, you know, how can I put this? Like, I would support an effort to make our movement and society more Apollonian, but I would also say that, you know, a lot of people out there could probably, you know, have their own kind of, how do I put it? And it's sort of like in Catholic or in Christianity, you've got Protestants, Catholics, Episcopalians, Baptists, So like Apollonianism could have its own sects, if you will. It's an idea that is really before its time. You know, and I guess in my particular case, I'm very like, I cherry pick a lot, I think. I'm mainly interested in how the philosophy relates to the arts and, you know, in context of the Jewish question. So that's pretty much the best answer for that, is I'm interested in Apollonianism in relation to how it reflects the Jewish question. So, that was a big answer right there. So, well, wow.
So,
lots to say on. Well, there we are. Yeah.
The Palaiologos dynasty and cultural flourishing. The Palaiologos dynasty started in 1261 to 1453, marked a period of cultural and artistic revival in Constantinople, despite the emperor's political and military decline. So again, I'm not exactly sure what that is. I mean, there's so much history here that we don't really know about, but let's just touch on that a bit more as well. Okay. The House of Palaiologos, Greek, female version, was a Byzantine Greek noble family that rose to power and produced the longest ruling dynasty in the history of the Byzantine Empire. Their rule as emperors and autocrats of the Romans lasted almost 200 years, from 1259 to the fall of Constantinople. So they were the last kind of ruling nobility then, it seems. And they were of Greek heritage. But the Romans and the Greeks, I think, were very, they were very much related, to be honest, when you study the history, through the Trojans and so on. There's a lot of connection there.
Definitely, yeah.
So yeah, it seems to be that there's a lot of rising and falling of powers, and you know.
That's a good way to put it. The rising and falling of powers, indeed.
And so there's nothing new really what's happening here in the West, I guess. It's just I mean, what can you say? It's
It's time marches on, like this is the nature of history, I suppose. We're changing. We're going through insane challenges that humanity has never ever had to face before. Like, for example, they're coming out with AI technology that is it's so realistic that it's the end of information, basically. We're heading there somewhat rapidly. And when you could create a world where you cannot tell the difference between like an actual news story and an AI, then there's no way to know anymore what's real. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
this can easily be weaponized against us, and it's a very serious crisis that essentially humanity is facing right now. Whenever I see things like Elon Musk, offering money for people to, become part of his AI team, and like, the focus on that stuff, it's like, for me, I see that as being very suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly what his plan is. He's clearly he's gonna try and fuse. He's a humanist, isn't he? He is a. He's looking to
I'm a transhumanist.
transhumanist. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I kind of see them as the same bracket: humanist, transhumanist. It's all rooted in the same worship of man, isn't it? To me.
I that's an interesting, how do I put this? Yes and no, in the sense that a lot of these ideas are really Marxist in their core, and it's individual, or what's the word? Individualism is it sounds great on the outside, but it's used, against us, to make us, atomized and not nationalist, and to go against everything. Is just, my pleasure, and me and all this kind of shit. And it's like, oh well, yeah, that's humanism. Well, yeah, but part of being human is being part of a clan, and part of a family, and part of a nation, and
Tribe,
all
yeah.
of that, and a tribe, and all these. This is how people survived over centuries and millennium. Da 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 da. So you can kind of see what I'm saying about that. It's
Yeah.
half true, I guess. I think half true is maybe a way to talk
Well,
about it.
I mean, transhumanism is, it's bridging the gap between, it's the merging of man and machine, isn't it? And Elon Musk, he's not purchased Twitter just because he wants to be the popular guy in town. He's purchased it because he's clearly got plans to merge that technology of Neuralink with people. So he's clearly got a vision of people just tweeting whatever they think to the next person. It's like he wants to be the man to almost mimic telepathy,
So, excuse me, transhumanism is soul slavery. It's the final step in total slavery, where the organic functions of the mind, the brain, no longer, they're now in control of whoever is in charge of.
In some ways, we're already there anyway, aren't we? With mass media, we're kind of in a transitional phase. It's just not part of us physically yet. Right. Mentally, we are slowly being broken down, I think.
That's 100% true. That's 1,000% true. That's the kind of what we in this generation have to teach our children and our grandchildren, and make sure that we warn future generations about transhumanism. It's a huge topic. It's not Constantinople, as far as like show themes and what have you, but very, very, very serious. I mean, it's almost the most serious thing. And one thing I do a lot in my own personal research is I try to tie together things like, for example, I'm interested in ufology, and there's a lot coming out on UFOs, etc. And so I'm always looking for, and I found sort of like these, sort of UFO channels that are popularizing these ideas, and discovered that ultimately not all of them, but some of them have this kind of,
I mean, like the
we're preparing humanity.
Gaia channels.
We're preparing. Well, I'm not saying them, but I'm saying individual people that are grifting out there.
Right.
So they'll say things to the nature of, humanity, we're preparing you to join the cosmic alliance and community. But in order to do that, first, you must all put away your guns, and you must all speak one language, and you must all get rid of your governments. And
yeah,
it's
almost
global.
Babylonian. I mean, Babylon back Babylonian.
Yeah,
that's why they say Babylonian is babbling. Babbling is a language. It's confounded language. And that was essentially the first melting pot of civilization. And obviously, as the biblical story goes, it was people were divided and given totally different languages. So we didn't intermix like that. So I think there's clear stories in the biblical perspective.
So my take on the whole thing is that if people in the ufology community are trying to teach or lead something and they ignore racial biology and these things, then I just say, okay, you're just a globalist. You're working for the enemy. You're controlled opposition. And because I've watched numerous shows on this topic and asked people, so what about the difference between races? Why are da 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 da? And I challenge these narratives, and sometimes I get good answers, and sometimes I don't. One of the, or more than one of these alien species that they keep talking about, like for example the Pleiadians and the Nordics are totally white. They're completely Caucasian,
Yeah.
And you have to wonder, well, why is that? Like, what's the connection? Why aren't they black? Why aren't they Arabs? Why aren't they something else? So it's the whole thing is that race is completely erased from the discussion. You're somehow not supposed to bring that into, weigh that into anything. But it's fucking, pardon my language, it's biology. How can you not, how can you ignore biology? And this whole kumbaya, let's all be one. If there's people of color that are high IQ enough to overcome, the 19% hominid gene, that creates all the violence and all these other things, then God bless them.
Well, I mean, I think ultimately my outlook is this. I've always said that the culture comes from within, from the people. And as that culture shapes and you have a society, I'm going to start adding a bit of colour to these actually. As you have a culture which is defined and shaped, you have law systems which surface from the people that regulate the society. And these people that regulate society put in provisions, laws, to try and maintain some form of stability. And these laws tend to coincide or mold around the tendencies, the impulses, and the essentially the people that live there, that inhabit it. So it's the culture, the people, the laws, the systems. They all kind of have a symbiotic relationship, and they're kind of the one in that way. That's why people in the East, they tend to have quite strict and ruthless ways of governing themselves. And so that the reason why they're so strict is because of the nature of the people. And so when you bring a nature of those people into a totally different environment where they no longer have those oppressive laws or systems of governance to keep them in check at every step of the
Hmm.
way because of
Yeah.
their natural tendencies and behaviors and impulses.
Right. Right.
You basically have a situation where, and you know, this isn't for everyone. There's outliers, of course, that manage to assimilate to a certain extent,
Yeah.
but
Right.
generally, en masse, people are better suited to their own cultures of their heritage. And when you know, when you get people coming to the West now, you get a massive increase of crime rates and things because
Yeah. Yeah.
essentially they're in a place which treats them like cotton wool, puts cotton wool fingers on, and sort of like tries to baby them, and it's like, well, no, back home their governments, their
Yeah.
leaders treat them in a way that they will respond in kind.
Very. Yeah. Very. Very.
So
Very harsh
that's essentially
punishments. Yeah.
what I think. You know, is why I don't believe multiculturalism works. Like I say, there's exceptions to the rule, but then they're outliers. If you know, generalizations and stereotypes,
Hmm.
unfortunately for people that vouch for multiculturalism,
Hmm.
they go, the facts speak for themselves. You know, we're
Totally.
in
Yeah.
the West now. We've not become a better nation for it. Who says
No, God.
we have
No. No. No.
become
That's not even a
any
question.
better off?
Right. That's not even a question. It's made us much worse easily. Um, so proximity plus diversity equals war is an equation that is fairly well known within our circles. You know, it's just to ignore history, to ignore biology, and have this insane, goofy belief that somehow diversity is our greatest strength is total suicide. It's cultural suicide, political suicide.
Mm.
You know, when I talk to Christians about race realism, I'll say things like, you know, like if whites disappear, Christianity is going with them.
Yeah,
And
that's true. Exactly.
yeah, and right, and I'm like, if you want your faith to exist, you have to fight for your people. No, no, no. And I don't care if there's any whites, just so long as Christianity still exists. I'm like, you don't understand what I'm saying. The thing, of course, is that they have many, many psychological impediments and blocks. You know, you know, they've been brainwashed for their whole lives. You know, um, plus there's punishments for thinking like this. You know, it's a very
Yeah.
harsh situation. Yeah, but I agree with you.
Again, I mean, Christianity was essentially, again, it's kind of like what I was talking about with terms of governance, and it came
Hmm.
as a cultural faith which came from a, you know, a people. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Here's an interesting factoid for you that fits what you're talking about. So when I taught English, you know, in New York City and Taiwan, and I've you know worked with a ton of Chinese people over like the 7 years that I was an English teacher, and I studied quite a lot about the communist takeover, the Cultural Revolution, all of these tragedies that happened in China. So,
mm,
um, and I there were times where my students would tell me, "Please don't talk about politics in class. Like we can't do that." And I'm like, "Why not?" And this is in like Queens, New York, and they'd say because the Chinese government has spies around here, you know, that they're
right.
watching us. They'll report back, and our families in China could get hurt. Can you believe that?
Wow.
So, like, what's the point of having these people in our communities, you know, at all, you know, if like this is the shit that they do, you know what I'm saying? But, and I mean, these were good folks, they were decent folks, but the thing is, I was like railing against communism, and they were saying, you don't know what it is to be Chinese. We have been at civil war for our entire history. We're talking 5,000 years of civil war almost nonstop. So the starvation, the violence, you know, all of it, we want it to stop. And communism was the only thing, I mean, this is what one person said to me. I'm super anti-communist. So like, don't, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm not trying to make excuses, but this is what this person said. She was saying, we need a system that is super authoritarian to hold us down, because otherwise we'll go back to hundreds of years of civil war.
So that's pretty much what I was saying. It's certain systems.
That's why I told you.
Yeah.
You nailed it.
Yeah. So I mean, it makes total sense to me. And so I mean, when we're talking about ghost genes and stuff, yeah, they clearly have different impulses. Different racial groups have different impulses, different ways of thinking, doing things, different creative expressions, and all that happens is you get in a civilization that whites are more accustomed to, in law systems and regulations which whites are more accustomed to and adapted to, systems which were designed for and by white people. Of course, white privilege will exist. I mean, let's not talk. Let's not kind of deny the notion of what white privilege is. It's essentially the ability to fit into society more, because your society is adapted to whites, because it's made for whites. So what they say is white privilege is, well, we need to change the system. We don't want the system to no longer benefit white people. Your culture is changing. It needs to accommodate to these people, and you're, not necessarily favored anymore. So that's part of globalism, and that's why it's happening. And communists will say that's great. I mean, that's fine. We are working towards equality by bringing one down and the other one up.
Typical, pill pull, talking out of two sides of your mouth. If white privilege exists, then so does Chinese privilege and Jewish privilege, and
exactly
Yemeni and Pakistani privilege, and you are the citizen of your country. So, of course, it was built for you. So it's really just more Marxist dialectic that I don't jive. I feel any need to I mean, there's people that'll troll the left and say, "Oh yeah, we need more white privilege," It's like, but to me, it's just a kind of like a boogeyman. I'm gonna read some comments here. I want to say hello to Der Kaiser. Welcome for joining. Thank you for joining and welcome. Deconstruction Art Studios is here. Fabulous. Good morning. B is here. Hey B, hit the like button. Yes. Do you believe in an actual expression of divinity in a god? I know that's a rough question. That's an excellent question. That's the kind of question that we love on this show. So you want to start with that? I think. That's
for myself. Yeah. I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm not a Judeo-Christian. I think there's a massive difference. But I do believe in a creator. A divine creator, that I do believe he's manifested himself. I mean, I'm a Christian, but I also believe nationalism is a godly thing as well. But so in terms of a divine, all-seeing, omnipotent God, yes, I do believe that. I don't believe we can fully understand or grasp him completely, but I think we can definitely connect with that God, and it's predominantly a masculine figure.
So the question, do you believe in an actual expression of divinity in a god? So it's really more the question of the belief in the expression of divinity. So I mean, I'll just try to jam on that a little tiny bit before you respond.
Sure.
Can man express the divinity of God? Is I think a pretty powerful question.
Can man express the
God,
divinity of God?
yeah. I'm kind of molding around this question because the question is an actual expression of divinity. So, I mean, I think there's a lot of people that have seen, experience the divinity of God through the arts. We were actually talking about that earlier on the show,
Mm.
and like the importance of art, religious art for spiritual technology. You can see it in the cathedrals, you can see it in Buddhist temples, you can see it all around everywhere in different cultures and such. So I would say it's a clear yes. But for me personally, that's a I mean, I don't know that man can ever apprehend or express the totality of God is just too great, um to so like we could do some kind of 3D representation of God, in some way, or the divinity of God. So I mean, it's just I think a really deep question. It's an interesting
Yeah,
question.
it is. I mean, I think the powers forces that are really pulling the strings in this world try to are pursuing that now, and they're pursuing it through technology. And if you think about
Yeah.
the qualities of what God is in terms of omnipresence, all seeing, all knowing,
Mhm.
anywhere and everywhere, you think about what powers they have at the fingertips with technology. I mean, a lot of those
Mhm.
attributes are within their grasp right now.
Mhm.
They have. I mean, if you think about the can you even begin to imagine what kind of metadata? We talk about metadata, data like real hardcore coded data on all the Google, and what Google
Oh,
essentially
it's
is.
mind blowing.
It's
Totally mind
Google
blowing.
is essentially the sum total of consciousness, really. At least that
Mhm.
people are searching, people are thinking. It's like a snapshot of consciousness, and so
Yeah.
all of this data is in their hands, and they can see trends, they can see
Yeah.
surges in thought
Right.
processes,
And
they can
they've
plan
got,
and
yeah, AI is
predict.
doing it for them.
Yeah,
AI is doing it
exactly.
for them.
And so if you think about it as a neural network of consciousness that they have knowledge of, they and an organism, they really are um they know the mind of people as a unit, and it's like waveforms. They can predict so much. They are ahead of the curve in many ways. So I think we're gonna have to
Right.
do something really uh unpredictable
Yeah.
to win and gain freedom.
Yeah. That's very true. It's a very high stakes game we're in here. Hippocratic Oath says, I think there will be a bifurcation of humanity, those that accept genetic modification, sterility, union with the AI, versus those that will become more human, discovering our suppressed gifts, such as our remote viewing. I am 1,000,000,000% on the same page with that statement. I cannot agree more. I think that is the meta spiritual battle of our day. Is the 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 information war is essentially to save that other half of humanity that, like a stupid sheep, is just going down that road towards uh, you know uh, eternal soul prison,
Mm,
eternal, eternally being cut off from God biologically. And it's the devil's dream. It's the devil's dream come true.
mm-hmm.
So, but the the other side of that, this awakening, this great awakening, is like so much bigger than most people know. It's something I'm researching like every single day for hours at a time, like throughout the day. And I'm surfing that information all the time. That's why I just bought 2 books on how to do astral projection. So
Really?
I'm a
Okay.
little afraid of it because it's a pretty heavy thing to do. It's pretty scary. But
Right.
at the
Yeah, I
same
mean,
time, though,
I've touched on that a little bit myself when I was younger. Read up on it, and I mean, I think it can be quite confusing, and to some extent a little dangerous. I don't know. Maybe it can help,
yes,
but I don't know.
absolutely. Yeah.
Um, but to be able to astral project, and one thing I remember reading is
Hmm.
you can practice in your day, in your waking life by, say, you're going through a door, knock on the door and be very aware and conscious in that moment, so that
Hmm.
when that same when you're in your dream and you come across the same general imagery, you've conditioned your mind to be fully awake in that moment and knock on the door and think, oh, there's a door, and then suddenly you knock on that door and you've conditioned a cue to question where you are. And it's that
Hmm. Hmm.
moment where you're questioning where you are, both simultaneously dreaming
Hmm.
and beginning to awake within the dream. And so then
Right.
once you've awoken within the dream, you can start to control your dream and where you
Right.
go. And then it's like, okay, who do I want to see? I want to go and
So
see it.
that's
Yeah.
right. That's called lucid dreaming,
Is that
and
not the
those
same?
techniques. Yeah, I used to practice lucid dreaming, and I did things like that
Okay.
to get the skill of lucid dreaming. Um, Out of body experience is not dreaming. It literally is your soul leaving your body and
Right.
traveling around and then returning. You enter the spirit realm. So you can imagine it's not a small thing, and that there are dangers involved in it. But
Yeah.
um,
Well, if you
that's
believe
why
in
mm,
negative spirits, then you are kind of leaving
yeah.
yourself open.
Well,
Maybe
that's
you'll tune in next week and I'll be like, "Hey, Donald." "Hello, Paul."
Donald isn't here anymore. No, 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 no. I'm kidding. No. There's enough. I feel like there's enough information out there. There's something called the Monroe Institute, straight out of the gate, that people can look up. Monroe Institute. I don't know if it's .com or .org, but these essentially the the CIA like hired them to teach them, how to do this for the CIA. That's how
Right.
that is.
Okay.
So like if the freaking CIA is doing it, then like you get the idea.
Yeah.
There was a time in during the Cold War where Russia and America were doing a lot of paranormal research,
Hmm.
and quite a lot. And of course, that stuff, there's only so much of that you can know, but like probably way more that we can't know or will never know.
I
Um,
definitely think there are sort of technologies and sides of humanity which they tap into to get ahead. I mean, even stuff as numerology, I'm pretty sure that they've
mhm,
they'll utilize, but completely try and mock it in the public eye. So
mhm.
yeah,
Anyway, so that's another discussion.
but yeah,
Uh,
let's go back
Seven
to the
Serpent.
sorry, I was
Go
going to
ahead.
read a bit more on the Constantinople because we've got a few more points.
Okay, go ahead, bud.
Let's finish off because these are the top key facts about Constantinople.
Let's
So,
do it.
number 9, fall to the Ottomans. On May 29th, 1453, Constantinople fell to the Ottoman Empire under the Sultan Mehmed II, marking the end of Byzantine Empire and a pivotal shift in world history, as it signaled the rise of the Ottoman Empire as a major world power. So yeah, that was the conquering in 1453, which is, I mean, I know it's long ago, but it's not that long ago, if you know what I mean. I mean, you're talking about just a little bit before America. Um,
Mm, yeah,
so it's
yeah.
still within a kind of a more recent history. Um,
Hmm.
and then number 10, renaming to Istanbul. Although Constantinople continued to be used by the West for centuries, the city was officially renamed Istanbul by the Turkish Republic in 1930,
Mm.
becoming the vibrant metropolis that bridges continents and cultures today. Obviously, this is taken from the internet. but
Yeah.
I don't think it would ever be as glorious as it was. Me and my bias there, but
Yeah, right.
mind you, it is. I mean, Turkey is a beautiful country. I mean, I've been a lot.
Yeah.
The landscapes, it's such a lovely climate, and it's beautiful. I mean,
Great. That's great. That's great. I wish that, see, this gets me off on like talking about Islam and stuff, because I feel like Islam and Judaism, communism, like they're all just slave systems, you know. And I know that, you know, there's a lot of thoughts and opinions on those topics and stuff, but yeah, there it is. So let me see if I can read a few more comments here. Seven Serpents is here. Welcome. It's good to have you. I gave up after a month of doing the book practices. Then it happened a few days later. Are we talking about out of body? A full out of body? No kidding. Wow. You'll have to tell me more. I'd love it if you could email me or get
out of body
on my telephone
experience
and discuss that more.
Man.
Yeah, I had two experiences that I do believe are out of body experiences. They're kind of like they're pretty off the charts, amazing and crazy.
Yeah.
So like it's a kind of a thing that I'm a little scared to tell people about, because I don't want them to think I'm crazy, you know.
He'll be putting you in some
they
kind
were-
of white strapped suit or something.
Well, they were,
You can strap me down,
were-
boys, but I won't be here.
yeah, keep put a chain on my soul so I don't disappear. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I could go into it, but it's a showstopper, you know. Like
Yeah, no worries.
Like, how do we segue into another topic after that?
Yes. Well, let's start off with another point here. 8 reasons why Constantinople was a rich part of European history and heritage. So, the first point here is that it was essentially a cultural melting pot, to a point where Constantinople's strategic location in the crossroads of Europe and Asia made it a melting pot of cultures, language and religions, this blend of Greek, Roman and Christian, and then later Islamic heritage created a unique culture and architectural legacy. So, I mean, there was a melting pot of cultures early on. Obviously, there were kindred cultures, mostly, which I feel heralded the greatness of Constantinople, and that was Constantinople. Istanbul is, for me, a line in the sand. So obviously that's where you got, you know, when we say Constantinople, we pretty much allude to the European sort of tribute, don't we?
Yeah.
So yes, I'll tell you one thing. I know this is slightly off topic, that I've been looking a lot more into, just out of pure curiosity, and I'm not saying I'm in no way, you know, a kind of adopt this worldview, but I have been looking at points for arguments for flat Earth. Now that sounds crazy, but there are some points which I think some things don't quite sit right with. They don't quite sit right with the current model that is said to be in place right now. Like, the one thing that stood out is Polaris. Do you know about Polaris?
No, I don't. I have a friend who is 1,000% convinced that the Earth is flat.
Right. Okay.
He's no dummy. I'm not there. It's not actually a topic I'm interested in researching, but like the fact that he is totally convinced of it is pretty compelling to me.
Right.
So
So,
go on.
I mean, the point is that Polaris is a star that never moves, and it's always in the same position, and it never changes. It's so much to the point where, you know, the what's it, them stones, what do you call them, the Rosetta Stones. There was a hole
Okay.
in the Rosetta Stones to mark the fact that this star Polaris never moves, and if you had a camera and had it there constantly, you would see all the stars around it in some form of
Moving.
kind of
Yeah.
moving
Yeah.
spiral, but this star would stay
It's
in one dot, yeah, because it doesn't move. But if we're going by the model that, you know, we are kind of rotating around the sun, which is going through space at sort of 666,000 miles per hour, and everything's
yeah.
orbiting that and so on, like this big clockwork, and it's a continuous thing, and then all the other stars are in exactly the same space with it in relation to it. It kind of makes you think, how does that work then? And there's a lot of points that I listen to, because they've started cropping up in my sort of Facebook feed, and
Okay.
I'm just thinking, how well that's a good point actually. How does that work? And things you've never questioned before. I mean, there might be perfectly good explanations, but things that you've never questioned, you kind of just assume to be true or factual, and
Right. Right.
it's just, I'm just kind of entertaining some of the talking points at the moment.
Right.
So
I think that overall that's a good thing to do. That, you know, we have to have intellectual curiosity, and we shouldn't dismiss everything just because it seems crazy, you know. So like it's interesting to do. I would say that sounds to me like the center of the universe, or the center of the galaxy, that the galaxy is rotating around it.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, if that's the center point and everything is, then it's clearly the center of our galaxy. At least I think that's what it's understood as, you know.
Polaris. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
again, I will look into that. But I just thought that was interesting.
Definitely. So, any other points? Let me see if there should I read some more of the points?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, give me a second here. Come on, computer. All right. Where did you leave off at?
I basically, on the second part, finished on number 1 of the 8 reasons why.
8 reasons why Constantinople was a rich part of European history and heritage. You did the cultural melting pot, is that it? Yeah,
that was the first one we discussed. All right.
That. Well, in that, okay, so the second one, center of the Christian Orthodox Church. The city was the seat of the ecumenical Patriarchate of Constantinople, one of the oldest Christian churches in the world, playing a central role on the development and spread of Christianity through Eastern Europe and Russia. So, for me, that's kind of how I think of Constantinople, is like the origin or the seat of Orthodox Christianity.
Yeah.
So, architectural innovations and influences. Constantinople's architectural marvels, such as the Hagia Sophia, influenced the development of architecture in both the Eastern and Western worlds. Its domes and minarets would inspire the design of mosques and churches across many cultures. See, I always thought minarets was an Islamic invention or a Persian invention. I didn't know that it actually came from us.
Who does know, eh?
Yeah. How about that? All right, cheers to that. Anyway, Byzantine art. Yeah, Byzantine art and iconography. The city was a center for Byzantine art, and known for its distinctive iconography and mosaics that influenced religious art throughout Christendom and the Islamic world. The preservation of Greco-Roman traditions in art and literature also played a crucial role in shaping the Renaissance. Muy interesante. Very good. Um, Economic hub of the medieval world as the endpoint of the Silk Road. That I didn't know. That's interesting. As the end point of the Silk Road and a key player in trade routes between Europe and Asia, Constantinople was an economic powerhouse. Its wealth came from its strategic position, facilitating trade in silk, spices, grain, and art, enriching European culture and economy. I did a good bit of reading on the Silk Road many years
Yeah.
ago when I was doing my Asian studies thing, and it's just a really significant part of, I guess, human evolution in a sense. Of all the ideas that passed back and forth between essentially the West and the East on that road are it's pretty extraordinary. Um, anyway, so legal and educational innovations, the codification of Roman laws, and under Emperor Justinian I in the Corpus Juris Civilis, laid the foundation for the legal system of many modern European countries. Constantinople's universities and libraries were centers of learning and preserved classical knowledge through the Dark Ages. That's very significant. That's very significant. To me, my understanding of the Dark Ages was really a lot to do with Muslim invasions. I mean, I'm hearing a lot about the Dark Ages were not so dark, that we were still,
I think, yeah.
progressing.
When you look at the feats of achievement in the Dark
Yeah.
Ages, I mean,
Yeah,
there's no
quote,
way
quote,
absolute
right.
peasants with no knowledge are building the
Yeah.
megalithic cathedrals that we struggle to build
Right.
today.
No kidding.
No way. I mean, how is that even possible to do that? It just doesn't make
Who
sense.
who came up with the term the Dark Ages? You got to kind of wonder.
Yeah,
Maybe there were
exactly.
some, there were pestilence and famine or something, this and that. I mean, that happens all the time everywhere. So anyway.
There's a Christian doctrine actually, which I'll just drop it since we're on the talk. There's the doctrine of the Millennium Reign. Have you heard about that? The Millennium Reign.
No, I
So
can't say I have. No.
in the Book of Revelation, there's the talk that there's the Millennium Reign, that Christ will come back and rule for 1,000 years,
Okay.
and or just not necessarily come back, but Christ will rule for 1,000 years in a kingdom with a rod of iron. And basically, a lot of people saying the timing of that completely correlates with 1,000 years of Christian rule within Europe, unfettered, unadulterated rule from from without outside influence, but with just and then it kind of lasted up till sort of towards the French Revolution, and then things started to happen, and then so there is that sort of thought that the millennial reign had already happened, and that's what essentially the Dark Ages were, when they weren't really that dark. But I mean, I haven't looked into that too much, but could be, maybe. It's just a thought.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll continue. Diplomatic center. Constantinople's strategic and economic importance made it a focal point of international diplomacy. It engaged in complex diplomatic relationships with European powers, the Caliphate, and later the emerging Ottoman Empire, influencing political and cultural exchanges. So, yeah, you would imagine, it would be a political crossroads, And then lastly, symbol of Christian resilience and Islamic conquest. The city's fall to the Ottomans in 1453 marked the end of the Christian Byzantine Empire and the rise of the Ottoman Empire, symbolizing a significant shift in the balance of power between Christianity and Islam. This event had profound implications for European history, leading to the age of exploration as Americans sought new trade routes to Asia. Constantinople, think about that. Like, I wouldn't be here in America today, probably, hadn't, I mean, not that's a great thing or whatever, but it's just interesting how any kind of struggle or limitation in our
Hmm.
history forces us to find other ways. And so even though we're in the age of white genocide right now, these pains and struggles and crises, these limitations are forcing us to find new ways.
True.
So it's survival. It's
Hmm.
survival. So I'll finish that up. This event had profound implications. I just read that. Constantinople's rich history and heritage as a center of power, culture, and religion for over a millennium make it a crucial part of European identity and the global historical narrative. And there you go.
Mm.
So that's quite something. Constantinople. Make Istanbul Constantinople again.
Yeah, imagine that, eh? You never know what's around the corner with all the lines are being drawn in the sand. It seems right now with all the different nations and that. Um, so
It's
never know. You
things
never
that
know.
I mean, I feel like all we really want at this point is just to have our countries back, and to
Yeah,
be
I mean,
unmolested, like to kick Islam out of the West is one of the most number one the things that we
well,
have to achieve.
yeah. I mean, we are. At least I'd like to think we were still. I know you're not Christian, but I think that was our culture prior to predominant culture prior to a lot of the mass migration. So yeah,
Mm.
I think end of the day, I think all peoples have a right to self-determination, and I don't believe that we should be meddling in a lot of what's going off in the Middle East either. You know, it
Not
works
at
two
all.
ways,
Not
doesn't
at
it?
all. Yeah,
So
I mean that I strongly agree with that. Um, that whole like, oh well, your government's been in my country for years, so now you have to pay back. Like F you, I didn't do any of those things. I'm not that person.
yeah, yeah,
I'm not paying back anything. There's nothing to pay back. Um,
exactly.
yeah.
Yes. So we are coming up to an hour and 37 minutes
Yeah,
on my
yeah,
clock.
it's
It's been
pretty long show here. I think that's
it
that's kind of
started off
a
a bit slow
standard.
for me, but I enjoyed the chats and uh,
Hmm.
and discussions on insights to history. Just going to finish off
Hmm.
this boat, I think. Drop a bit of colour in there.
Nice.
I quite like this rough approach, to be honest. It means that I can, you know, another thing on perfectionism and stuff. I've always in the past had this thought that I need to do something like perfect, or it needs to be
Hmm.
I need to have it a really polished, finished image, and every week.
Okay.
And to be honest, a lot of the time, I think that just kills productivity. It's like, so I'm quite enjoying doing a rough styles at the moment. Like the Alexander the Great one, I thought turned out quite nicely, and that started out rough.
Yes, I
And
agree. Yeah.
I'm just doing these very basic sketches and putting a bit of colour in and working over
Hmm.
them afterwards
Hmm.
within a set amount of time, because otherwise I'm not going to be able to kind of get stuff done if I've got this vision of perfection every single time, you know.
True. It's kind of crippling, to be honest. If
And
you get.
also, what I found is you tend to get a lot of energy captured within these sketches, like loose energy that's captured somehow.
Hmm. Yeah.
And in the past, when I tried to do something quite straight lined and neat and perfectly tidy, it kind of
Yeah.
loses some of the energy. Do you know what I mean?
Oh God, yeah. I'm very very connected to that. Like looseness is. I don't know how looseness. I'm not sure that's the right way to frame this, but I think that lines have to be lively. That art should be alive. That the method, the tools should show in the work. That it's kind of part of the flavor of it. it's part of the texture, it's part of the aesthetics of the art, is that you can see how it was made. You know what I mean? I feel that that's the difference between art, like visual, how should I say, painting, drawing, and photography. And photography is reality, right? It's an exact replication of reality that we can work past that in these visual arts with the tools we use, etc. So like a camera could never produce what I'm doing right now with my hand. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so let's just bring up your large version and talk about it quickly.
All right.
1 second.
Oh, is that what you're doing on
your
your
so yours is
screen
large on my screen now. So looking in that looks
right.
pretty cool. So
thank you. Like, so you and I were having a discussion before the show. Maybe we talked about it on the show. I forget about this space right here, and I was thinking about putting something that appeared to be like objects on a table that invite the viewer to join these two here in going through the origin of Constantinople in the Roman Empire, the Crusades taking back our taking back symbolically the white world, and then what are the tools that you would have today that you would use to join these two people in our history to go back and make Istanbul Constantinople again. So this is sort of a question I haven't really answered quite yet, but I think that I'm pretty pleased with the general composition, and I like the way the light is working and stuff on this. So.
Yeah, it's very definitely thought-provoking, and I quite like the cultural aspects of the linking it to the Crusades, and obviously got Constantinople in there. Yeah, good stuff. So are you gonna finish this off? Maybe show it next week if you got time.
Yeah, let's wrap it up here, guys. I want to say thank you to everyone in the chat, all the interesting conversation, another successful show with Patriotic. So you guys join us next week. Keep an eye out for the polls. Patriotic puts out a poll on what theme would you guys like us to do this week. I guess where is it? Is it on? It's on Telegram. Is it on Twitter?
No, just Telegram. If you follow us on Telegram, Patriotic Arts, and that's just for the info and the archive of patriotic artwork and videos, time-lapse videos, and the if you want to watch the recap of these videos. So check that out. And there's also the Patriotic Arts community, which is the discussion group, and where you can take part, submit, and get involved yourself. It'll be nice to see other people create stuff for these topics as well. So
Nice.
yeah, on that note, it's been another pleasant stream. A bit of a slow start for me with some technical glitches in the first 10 minutes or so, but really enjoyed the talks again, and yeah. So
nice. All right.
yeah,
Well,
till
thanks,
next
guys.
time.
We'll see you guys next time. Have a wonderful day and take care.
Bye bye.